Good Wednesday to you, everybody, in Gov 603. Welcome to week BAM 6. How's everybody doing? How you holding up? How you hanging in there? We're not quite halfway through the semester, but we're creeping up on it, okay? Got a couple of things due, so this is, probably a busy time for you. I understand that. So, remember to be good to yourself and get your priorities in order. Delicious. What do we have here? The Craving Wilderness Cup. I think I picked this up at the Natural History Museum in Denver, Colorado, if memory serves. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about you. Okay, before we get to the readings and the questions and your comments from last week, week 5, a couple of housekeeping items that we need to attend to. First and foremost, stay focused. The first part of your paper, that was ominous, is due this February 24th. So that's a little under 10 days. All right. And also, your midterm exam will be on March 1st. That's when it opens up, and you'll have a couple of days. I've had some of you email me, is there a study guide? Yes, there is. Go into the assignments folder, and you will find it there. Now, look, the purpose of the class is for you to sort of pick out what's important, right? That's a skill that you need to develop throughout your life. So I'm not going to give you everything that you're expected to know, and then I'm just going to say, okay, memorize 1, 2, 3, and then the exam is, and I go, okay, give it back to me, and you go 1, 2, 3. All right, that's not an exam. That's like a trained parrot, which you are not. Okay, so I've given you examples, a rather lengthy list by way of examples of the sorts of things that I want you to focus in on. And if there's any ambiguity, major concepts, terms, all right, things that you're finding during the discussions, week by week, question by question, everything that's on the exam. These are either drawn from the discussion boards or from my videos. You cover those two things, you are ready. So exam opens on March 1st. It will close on the 3rd. It is a closed book exam. You'll have one whack at it. Okay, you get 90 minutes. Once you start, don't bail out because that's it. Excuse me. Okay, and if you run into a computer problem, contact me and we'll see what we can do. Okay, so for your paper, likewise, some of you have asked me, some of you, you concern me. You're like, oh, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. All right, look in the assignments folder and download that guide. Okay, and if you're at least at this point, or I should say, especially at this point, because we're getting later in the semester, call me during my office hours. My number, the number for my office is listed right on the syllabus. I have office hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I am in my office from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so if you're in the middle of the country, that's what, 11 to 1, something like that. Okay, give me a call and we'll get your questions answered. All right. Week 5. Let's take a look at the questions and your responses and see what we learn. Okay, what is external validity? Question number 1. What is external validity and why is it a characteristic of a good research design? All right, Andrew, in political research design, external validity is claimed finding from applying comparative analysis of 2 or more variables to a more significant number of cases. This is according to Howard. According to Howard, it answers the who cares, so what question. Okay, yeah. External validity, to put it in brief, good answer, Andrew. External validity, to put it in brief, is can the results of your study be applied to the general population? Because it's logistically not possible to ask the entire population a particular set of questions. And so 9 times out of 10, what you are after as a researcher is the question of whether the findings that you get from studying this particular group, particular political ideology, a particular geographical location, a particular ethnic demographic, whether the findings from this group could be applied to everybody that pertains to this group, wherever, whether you ask them to survey and you analyze their responses or not. That's external validity. And the goal, the drive, the purpose of the researcher, for the most part, is to ensure external validity. Okay, so Richard, let's have a look at what you said. External validity refers to our ability to extend the findings to some larger population of cases, or you could just stop at, say, larger population. Okay, excellent. External validity in relation to research design extends the findings to additional circumstances that are similar, or populations that are similar. For example, what has worked for one particular state to control gun violence may work in another state. Okay, now here's the interesting part about external validity. You have to be careful when applying the findings of your study to other places that it was not in. You have to be careful not to overlook particularities, and we can call them variables, that might be different from place to place. So, for instance, to use your example, Richard, gun culture in, say, Cody, Wyoming, is going to be very different than gun culture in, say, St. Louis, Missouri. Okay, so and when you have these additional factors, they're sometimes called covariance. So the statistical term for it, the variable, independent, dependent variable, the thing that's happening and the thing that it causes, independent variable, dependent variable. And then there are additional variables. It's extremely rare, you could probably say never, that there is a single cause and a single outcome. There are usually multiple causes and multiple outcomes. Now, as a researcher, you might just want to look at one cause and one outcome and then say, is this true for the general population? That's what you're looking for in external validity, right? Very important. Okay, good answers. Question number 2, briefly explain the difference between large N and small N case studies. Why would you use one as opposed to the other? Crystal, the difference between large N and small N case studies is large N studies covers a large number of participants, as the name suggests, and are randomly selected and divided into groups. The data is shown as groups averaged, then studied through the use of numbers. Okay. Now, that's the answer is perfectly fine, Crystal, but I want to make sure, guys, folks, Crystal, ladies and gentlemen, when you're writing out your answer, make sure that you could explain it another way. If I phoned you up and said, hey, and I'm not picking on you, Crystal, perfectly good answer, but if I phoned you up and said, hey, you wrote in your answer that the number of participants are randomly selected and divided into groups, and the data is shown as a group average and then studied through the use of numbers. Could you explain that to me? Now, imagine that you were getting the call or an email. Make sure that you can explain it to yourself, because if you can't, dig a little deeper. Okay, small N number studies, the small N study is of a small number of participants. Okay, down to why would you use one as opposed to the other? If the researcher wanted to a generalized answer over a large number of subjects, such as how a cancer drug would fight multiple types of cancer, then they would use a large N case study. However, the researcher desired the answer to a more particular question about specific cases, such as if a particular drug was designed to target a rare type of cancer that would work, then the small case study would be a better choice. Okay, true and true. Also, and this is something I wanted you to pick up on, the use of a small number of people as opposed to a large number of people is directly related to external validity. All right, the smaller your survey sample or test sample, in the case that you're using, Crystal, of researching the effects of a drug on people's disease or just on the people, the smaller number of people you have, the less likely it is that you can assume external validity. All right, because then errors creep in, and you can't assume that, say, what's true for 10 people is going to be the case in 10,000, because you're going to get too much in the way of difference within 10,000 than you got within 10. Okay, so that's also something I wanted you to identify. So make sure you make a note of that. You might see it somewhere else again, like on a test or something. A wink. All right. Question number 3. Briefly discuss two of the various hypotheses listed in Chapter 4 of Pounder. Using these two hypotheses selected as a model, construct 2 or more. Okay, so really the method to the madness of this question is I want you to get used to writing out hypotheses. You will make your life so much easier as a researcher if you start with a hypothesis. Now, what do I mean by start with a hypothesis? I don't mean that you think in hypotheses. That's not what I'm saying. You can sit there and go, geez, what's really the problem here? Or what do we really need to be looking at? And you can be going through that process of discernment, of questioning. But then to put it into the framework of a research project, start with a hypothesis. And remember, 3 characteristics of a hypothesis. Number 1, there is a relationship between at least 2 variables. And I strongly encourage you to keep it to 2 variables, because if you want to do more variables, then just create more hypotheses. It just keeps it straightforward and simple. So there's a relationship between 2 variables. Number 2, you are making a prediction about the relationship between these 2 variables. And number 3, this prediction has a direction. In other words, you're saying when this occurs in this way. Okay, so I think, for example, if we go to Richard, let's see. So here's your sample hypothesis. Criminals believe that it is proper and fitting to terrorize the community, resulting in a national crime epidemic. Okay, that's not a hypothesis, Richard. Let's see. I hypothesize. Here we go. I hypothesize that the current fuel prices at the pump, is not a result of supply and demand. Okay, right there. Stop. Because then you say, but simply the price set by the oil refineries. Okay, so you clip that part out and create a second hypothesis. All right. And you don't have to have the I hypothesize on there, by the way. You can just say the current fuel prices at the pump are not related to supply and demand, as the economists suggest. Current fuel prices at the pump are related to prices set by oil refineries. Okay. Now, by the way, Richard, by and by, I mean, oil refineries don't, just pull oil out of their ear. They're a link in the supply chain. And so what they pay for it influences what they charge once they turn it into gasoline. But that's a different argument. All right, that's not an argument. That's a different discussion. We're looking at the hypotheses here. So you have 2 elements, okay, prices and supply demand. You have a relationship. The high, and we're assuming you mean high prices, not connected to supply demand, and you have a direction. You're not saying supply demand drives prices. You're saying it does not. Okay. And then secondly, prices driven by oil refineries, not oil refineries driven by prices. 2 variables, predicted relationship with direction. Rebecca, let's see what you had to say. Definition of hypothesis, et cetera, et cetera. As cell phone use increases among residents, and by the way, if you were writing this out, you would want to clearly define what you mean by residents, and I mean within the hypothesis. Residents of, suburbs. I'm just making that up. Okay. Cell phone uses increases among residents. Library patronage decreases. Okay, great. So you are not saying, Rebecca, as library patronage decreases, cell phone use increases. Now you could look at communities in which the visitation rate and hours used in library has gone down and say, does that drive cell phone use up? Or is it the other way around? As cell phone use goes up, it drives down participation, patronage, time spent in libraries. Good examples. Okay. Question number 4. Briefly discuss the differences between the qualitative and the quantitative research methodologies. I'll post a link to an example of both. Judah. Okay, Powner describes several differences between qualitative and quantitative methodologies. Primarily, these differences come down to how the two methodologies are interested in cause and effect. Very, very good. Qualitative methodologies are usually interested in discovering the causes of effect, all right, while quantitative methodologies are used to observe the effects of various causes. Now, it might sound like a little wordplay, but does everybody understand that? Let's do that again. Discovery the causes of effects. In other words, what causes this to happen? Quantitative methodologies are used to observe the effects of various causes. This happened. What was the precipitating factor? Okay, everybody understand that? Okay. In addition, qualitative studies often use primary sources, carefully selected cases, clear descriptions of causal chains. So, like historical documents, verbal interviews with people in which you look for similarities in language, and you do content analyses, and that could be within things that are printed or spoken. Okay, you can do a content analysis there. Quantitative studies, on the other hand, typically use large databases. They include all possible cases. They operate by ruling out other possible cases for an observed effect. Yeah, quantitative research does not like exceptions, doesn't like things that stand out. They like to, in fact, within a quantitative research design, one of the first things that you do is get rid of any cases that stand out. Well, what do I mean by stand out? Okay, so let's say that that you're trying to establish a relationship between smoking and cancer. So you set up a study in which you take 100 people and you count how many cigarettes they smoke every single day, and then you count the incidences of cancer. That is how many people get cancer. And among those 100 people, let's say there are 3 of them that they smoked, like 3 cigarettes for 3 days and they got cancer. Now, the other 97 people, they're smoking something like a pack a day every day for 10 years, and there's no cancer. Every day for 20 years, and then you start seeing cancer. Okay, those 3, that's an apparition. That is way out of the norm. You would throw them out of the study. So because that's not really the average. We're looking for the median. We're looking for what's right in the middle, the top of the bell curve, and that ain't it. Out it goes. That's not typically the case in quantitative analysis. Now, you can identify things that are, and the statistical term is outlier. You can identify the outlier saying, this person really made a whole lot of noise about their political belief and, decorated their entire house. This is not representative of how most people and why they put up signs in their front yard for candidates. Okay, so you can make that distinction, and the discussion within your analysis in quantitative research, you would just throw it out of the database. Okay? All right. I included that question in there because it's important that you know the difference between the two as you are designing your research study, your first part of your paper. Okay? And so in your methodology section, it's important that you, the writer, tell me, the reader, way are we going to handle the data here? Where are you going to get it? Where are you going to get it from? And then what are you going to do with it? Okay, so that's why that question is in there. Okay, everybody. I know this is the busy part of the semester, so hang in there. All right, you're doing great. I enjoy reading the discussions, and I think about you a lot. And I know there are a couple of you who are going through some very difficult times right now, some family things. So you know who you are. I won't mention you by name. But understand, I am praying for you, okay? And everybody else. I think about you. I pray about you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. I will see you on Blackboard. Bye-bye.